Hey everyone, this is Britton Latulip here, and we're going to do another session. I'm going to answer some of your questions. I've been going back through the lists of new members and looking at different questions, and today I found one that just kept popping up, so I'm going to address it today. For those of you who are new, welcome to the group. And one of the questions that kept coming up in the groups, or in your initial questions that you guys asked, was how do I know if I'm teaching my kids enough? And I think that's a fear that a lot of parents have. They know that the public schools have this huge curriculum and they have all of these standards that they're trying to meet. And sometimes we lose focus over here on the side as a homeschooling, and we lose touch with what the public schools are doing, especially like in the state like Idaho where it's not super regulated. We kind of forget about that, and then we worry, man, are my kids getting behind? Am I doing enough? And a lot of times we'll just start filling and doing all these extracurricular things, and we think by doing more, we're going to achieve more. And so I'm going to address that today. First thing, are you teaching your kids enough? That should be a question you should be able to answer. Most of us are public schoolers, prior public schoolers, so we went through the system. We know what those kids learned and didn't learn. We know it's not this miraculous thing that they're learning like tons and tons of stuff. So we should have a pretty good grasp already on what they're learning. So you should feel confident in that. You know what they're learning. You know the basics. You'll be okay. The second thing, you have permission to think. You're an adult. You are a parent. You live in the real world. You have a pretty good perspective on what's important in the real world. I know that in the public schools, they feel so much stuff, like calculus and chemistry and all these different subjects. As an adult, in the real world, I've never used calculus. I studied AP calculus. I did okay. Or I guess it was honors calculus. But I did okay in high school. I couldn't solve a problem today. I've never had to solve a problem. I think going through school, I had a weird perspective that I'm going to get out into the world and there's going to be all these things, like you're going to apply for a job and you almost have to take the SAT again, and they're going to quiz you on some of the history and stuff. And then you get out into the real world and you realize, you know what? It wasn't that important. There were other things I probably should have been learning. I wish I would have learned, but the chemistry, you're really okay without it. So my point of that is just use your brain. You live in the real world. Don't worry about what's going on in the public school system unless your state requires you to meet, those standards. But use your brain as an adult and say, what are the things that my kid needs to know to become a successful adult? And in revealing school, I think it's actually in education. In education, we talk about faith, family, finances, and fitness. Those are the things that are most important. And we say fitness, we're talking about our overall health. Those are the things that really matter in the real world as an adult. Our faith, our family. Families in America are absolutely devastated for the most part. The divorce rate's so high, it only recently started to go down, and that's because more and more people just aren't getting married. They're just shacking up. So understanding how a family works and having the skills to lead and organize a successful family, that's really important. I think that's a lot more important than calculus. So just think about what your kids need to know, and you can come up with a curriculum for it. You don't have to do exactly what everybody else is doing. You'll be okay. The next point I wanted to make, teach the essential. Often I do public speaking. I go to conferences and I give a speech, and I always ask these homeschool moms, because homeschool moms are super smart. They're teaching all the kids. They've got all the facts. They're super smart. I say, can any of you homeschooling moms name the 3 ships that Christopher Columbus sailed to America, the New World, on? I know he didn't sail on all 3 of them, but the three that were on his voyage. And a bunch of hands shoots up. Most of them can name all 3. And then I ask the second question. I say, okay, so very good. You got it. So the second question's harder. If you didn't know the name of those 3 ships, how would your life be any different? Think about that. I think we all studied it. I know I studied it. I remember having to write in the name of the 3 ships. So in the public school system, for some reason, that was an important fact. But if you didn't know that, how would your life be different? It probably wouldn't be. Not in the things that really matter. You really don't need to know. In this book, I talk about that. I call that a trivial pursuit. We have this obsession with Trivial Pursuit. If you've ever played the game Trivial Pursuit, you think, oh man, the smartest guy, he's going to win. Or, the guy who knows all those interesting, crazy, weird facts. We think, oh, he's super smart. I look at that guy and I'm like, man, you might not be too smart, because you've probably just memorized a whole bunch of useless facts. You've absolutely wasted your time if you know that. Trivial actually means useless. So the most useless facts. Congratulations. It may make you feel more like a scholar, but it's not going to make you any more successful at life. So just think about that. Are we on a trivial pursuit, or are we providing an education that's actually going to enhance our children's lives outside of academia? After the SATs and all that's gone, what's going to be important to our kids? What do they really need to know? And I love history, and if you want to know the name of the 3 ships, I don't think that that's a problem, but I call that a fun fact. A lot of what we do when we're studying in school, a lot of it is just fun facts. It's not actually essential knowledge. Faith, family, finances, fitness, that is absolutely essential. When I say finances, I'm talking about building wealth, but I'm also talking about a marketable skill, and I'll get into that in just a second. So teach the essential, and we'll talk about what's essential in just a second. This is the next point. If you miss something, let's say that and you're doing so much, you've got all your checklists and you're researching all this stuff. Let's say that you miss something. There's a hole in your kid's education and they go out into the real world. It's okay. You'll be fine. Your kids will be fine. We live in the information age. They will be able to find that information on their own, and they'll be able to educate themselves. I think I read somewhere, this could be totally wrong. I'm just pulling this off my head. I read somewhere, I believe they said the average person can learn how to read in 120 hours, which means even if you didn't teach your kid how to read and they went out on their own within a 40-hour work week, that's 3, maybe it takes them a whole month or something like that to learn how to read. It's really not that big of a deal. When I was in school, I studied Spanish. Big mistake. I've never used Spanish. I used to look for opportunities to use Spanish, but I took I guess it was 3 or 4 years of Spanish. I can't speak much of it anymore, but when I joined the military, I got assigned a different language. Everybody wanted Spanish because that's what everybody studied in school for the most part. I got assigned Chinese. So, oops, there was this huge educational hole. I wish I would have studied Chinese. In 6 months, I learned Chinese and was fluent, and I did a 45-minute conversation on the phone to somebody in California, and we talked for 45 minutes in Chinese, okay? So you can learn it if you need it, and I think that that's a better way to do it. Instead of learning, just a random foreign language, like I know kids study French, and then they're hoping to take a trip to France someday so that they can speak in French, but most of the tourists there, the tourist attractions, stuff like that, they speak English anyway. But they're going to go on a trip just so they can use that part of their education. It's not essential. I guess that's my point. And there's tons of other people who go to France on vacation and they don't speak French and they get by just fine and have a great time. So the point is that that's probably not an essential thing. It might be. It might be. If you want to go to the mission field someday in South America, or, Spanish is becoming more and more popular in this country. A lot of people speak Spanish. That seems a little bit more common sense. Even Chinese now, they're like a third of the world's population, I think. So anyway, my point was I even studied the wrong language in school. I studied Spanish, but I needed to know Chinese. And within 6 months, it was intensive. It was a long day. We studied Chinese all day long. But within 6 months, I could speak it pretty fluently. I can't anymore. I can a little bit. Okay, but sometimes I stress on if I might miss something with my high school, something she will need for college. Okay, yeah, I guess that's a true point. If you're trying to get your kids into college, there's going to be certain things that you're going to have to hit. But if you remember in high school, and if you just go online and look up, there was this amazing video. It was so funny. It was a high schooler. He's a senior, and he was actually quizzing other high schoolers. And he was just going around, and these kids are getting ready to graduate, actually. He was quizzing other seniors getting ready to graduate. And he asked them basic questions like, can you name a country? And some of them just go totally blank. They can't name a country. Can you name the first president? What was the war that we won our independence? These are really, really basic questions he's asking seniors in high school. I promise you they're all going to college, and they couldn't answer them. A ton of them couldn't answer anything. They didn't know anything. So even if your kids were in the public school system, because of block learning, they would they would go through that subject. They probably wouldn't retain it. And it doesn't matter. Your kids will be okay. I just read something that they're considering getting rid of the SATs altogether. I think you'll be okay. I don't think there's going to be this huge hole. And if it gets to the point that you're close to college, you're in high school, and there's this huge hole in their education, they'll learn it. By the time your kid's in high school, if you're following this and what's to come in this series, you'll realize that you should barely be touching your kids by the time they're in high school. You really just kind of guiding them, pointing them in the direction. But my daughter's 12 years old, and I don't even know what she does half of the time. She reads her own books, she picks out her own curriculum, she sets her own schedule, she's very motivated, she's super smart. Like, it should be a self-guided education. And if she wants to go to college, she'll start looking at requirements probably when she's about 16, and she'll start meeting those on her own. It's not my job. She'll start guiding herself, and she'll figure it out. Like, getting into college is not that hard. There's tons of universities. It's a business. They want your kids. Everybody's kid is going to be able to go to college if they want to. If you're trying to get your kid into one of these elite colleges like Harvard or Yale or something like that, yeah, the standards are a little bit higher. I don't necessarily know that I would want my kid to go to Harvard. Harvard's extremely, in my opinion, a very bad school. Most of the success that they tout, I feel like it's rigged. And you just saw some of the rigging, I think, in the news and stuff like that. But the other thing is they'll say, okay, this amount of graduates who go to our prestigious school, they go out there and they're very successful. What they're not telling you is they're recruiting like the top 0.11% of students, like the top smartest kids in the country, because everybody wants to go to Harvard. So they get the best kids, and of course those kids are going to be successful. But did Harvard do it? I point to like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, like they were in Harvard. Like technically they went to Harvard, but they both dropped out. I think Zuckerberg was like halfway through his sophomore year, so he went there for a year. So Harvard did not make Mark Zuckerberg. But Harvard gets to claim some of the credit. Like, hey, he went to our school, he's one of our alumni, and look how much money he's making. You got people like George Bush. I mean, that guy's like a trust fund baby. He was never not going to be rich and successful if you know the history of his family. But he went to Harvard. He didn't even do very well. I think he was a C student. Harvard doesn't matter, okay? There's tons of people who go to Harvard. I served in the military with an enlisted guy who went to Princeton, I think. Great school. But he's like a normal kid. He went there on a baseball scholarship, and he ended up getting a normal job. So, in other words, Harvard's not the end-all, be-all. It's super expensive. I don't even want my kids to go there. A normal college is not hard to get into. Your kids will be okay, I promise. Okay, I'm looking more at doing college credits for high school. If you do it right, you can actually have a degree after high school. Yeah, that's great. Gosh, I'm not a super expert. I'm going to just be totally honest. I'm not like really pushing my kids to go to college. They may have to at some point, but I feel like if we just give them a strong foundation, if we give them the character, if we are teaching them what they need to know, and then they want to go to college, I'd start looking at that maybe at 16. Once you kind of narrow down more of a career path for your kid, and then say, okay, you want to go to college, by the way, you'll need this, this, and this, and that's how I'd go for there. The other thing that I would consider if you're trying to get your kids into a good school is what sets kids apart isn't the good grades and all the hard classes they took. That's almost irrelevant. Everybody kind of does that. It's really being great at something. So if your kid is like a chess champion, national chess champion, he's going to have an easier time getting into Harvard than if he was like a straight A student and he did all the extracurricular things. They want to look for excellence. Like my buddy, he went to Princeton University. He was a pretty good student. I think he was like pretty much straight A student and stuff like that. But he played baseball. He was really good at baseball, so he got in. I had another buddy. We wrestled together. You know, he's an average, a pretty good student. You know, smart kid and stuff. But he was a really, really good wrestler, so he went to Stanford on a wrestling scholarship. So instead of being good at, pretty good at all the stuff, if he's good at one thing or she's good at one thing that really sets them apart, like an amazing artist or, a chess champion or just something like that that sets them apart in a unique way, I think that's almost more important. Okay, you can go to college at any point in your life. You have not. Okay, that's another great point. Your kids don't have to go to college. So let's say you get them to 18 and they're not ready for college and you failed again. They'll be okay. They can go back to college at any time. It's a business. Always take your money. College isn't really a big deal. It's a very actually low bar to shoot for, in my opinion, because anybody can go to college. I know kids that they weren't too smart, or they were probably smart, but they didn't really apply themselves in school. They all went to college. It's okay. I tried with my 9th grader. It didn't work. I had to back off. 11th, 12th grade. We may try 11th, 12th grade. Okay. Yeah, so that's my take on that. I just want you to know that there's not a ton of pressure. Your kids will get into college. You'll be okay. It's really not that hard. When we talk about racing children for greatness, we're trying to set the bar a lot higher than college. So I feel like college is a really low bar to shoot for. I want them to be successful in life. I want them to be wealthy, and not because rich it matters, but I want them to be able to have a lifestyle where they have options. When you or follow the normal path. You go through high school, you get out of college, you have tons of debt. Now you are in the rat race. You have to make a living. You have to get whatever job you can. It's a very stressful way to live life. I'd much rather have my kids have what I have. I'm able to work from home. I do what I'm passionate about. I write these books not because I need a ton of money from them, but I'm passionate. I love doing this. I love writing and illustrating the children's books. And let me tell you, it is super hard to make money as an artist and an author. It's in the real world. It is super hard. I'm able to do that because we were able to generate some wealth outside of this stuff. So we're able to be passionate. And that's what I want for kids. I want them to know how to build wealth. I want them to know how to be successful past college, if that makes sense. Okay, so teach the essential. If you miss something, it's okay. Now we get to marketable skills. So what is essential? Calculus is not essential. If they need it for college, take it. Chemistry is not essential, although some of chemistry is essential. I took honors chemistry. It was super advanced. I've never used it. I don't even know it anymore, and it was just a whirlwind, and it was actually a really hard class for me. There is some chemistry that's important that every kid should know. We're going to probably do a book like that, and that's where you just teach the essentials. Like, you need to know about these reactions, or you need to know this algebra and this geometry, but you don't need to know the whole spectrum of it. So teach the essentials on that, but now we get into what does every kid need to know to raise children for greatness. One, they need a marketable skill. And in my opinion, you don't wait till college. If you want your kids to be great, they need to, if you look at anybody who's great, really has success at the highest levels, most of them started when they were little kids. So, you look at professional athletes, you look at some of the greatest artists, a lot of them had training when they were little. We say it takes about 10 to 15 years to master something. And it doesn't matter if you start when you're 4 years old, maybe 5 years old or something, once you're learning how to read, or you start when you're 25 after college. So if you start at 25, you're going to hit mastery around 40. Maybe 35 you work really hard. If you start at 5, you'll hit it around 20. So our goal for my kids is to give them a marketable skill that they'll have when they turn 18. So if they want to go to college because they have to, depending on their career choice, maybe they'll go to college, but my goal is for them to have a marketable skill at 18 where they won't need to go to college. They'll be able to already go out and get employment. There are certain jobs that are required. If you want to be like a doctor or lawyer, you're going to have to go to get some schooling, but that isn't what I'm hoping for my kids. So anyway, a marketable skill, absolutely essential. Too many kids are out there mastering sports. They're perfecting, putting a ball in a hoop or something like that. So really, that is the level of professional training where they are mastering a skill. The problem is that skill doesn't really matter, and most of them aren't going to be able to be professional athletes. I talk about it in Revealing School. I try to get that out of your head in Revealing School and talk about the statistics. Like, it's almost like winning the lottery to become a professional athlete. And if your kids are playing soccer, so many kids play soccer, do it for fun. But if he's out there every day training to be the best, he's perfecting a skill. I better plug this in. He's perfecting a skill that is not marketable. And he's probably, it's kind of a waste of time. But if he had perfected a skill like framing or something, or coding, those are skills that are marketable. He'll easily be able to get a job in those areas. And if he started coding at 5, 6, 7 years old, when he's 20, he'll be a master. He'll make great money. Or he's framing houses, building houses or something like that. Those are marketable skills. I think every kid should master at least one marketable skill by the time they're 18. So that if everything goes to heck in life and their dreams don't come true, they can make a living with or without college. The other thing we say that's essential is wisdom training. The public schools do not do this at all. Wisdom is really important. There is a basket of knowledge that's been accumulated. It's wisdom that's been passed down through the ages. And most kids, it's not even a subject. They read some literature, they do their chemistry, calculus, they don't study wisdom. Wisdom is powerful, it's so important. There's financial wisdom, there is wisdom when it comes to raising families, and most of this is traditional. And the reason something becomes traditional is because it's wisdom put into practice, handed down over time. But in our society, it's very American to buck tradition, and that's gotten us really far. Our families are absolutely devastated. And our kids are just so well behaved. If you look at what, some of the youth today and stuff like that, maybe tradition's important. I talk about that in, I think it's the 3rd or 4th book. So I think it's the 4th book is coming. But wisdom is important. Most of us study Aesop's fables because they're cute stories, our kids' teacher, something like that. You should study all of them. I think there's like 2,000. I don't know. It's a huge number. But those weren't fun stories. Those were wisdom put into a story for children, because the Greeks thought it was really important to pass wisdom down. When you read the Proverbs, that is a book that adults read. I don't know how many kids read it, but it was actually written for kids. It's Solomon or David writing to his son. It's addressed to his son, and it's giving him wisdom for worldly living. And it's really smart. It was meant to be passed to kids, and kids aren't getting that. There's so much wisdom when it comes to business and strategy and stuff like that. It doesn't have to come with old age. It doesn't come with old age or experience. A lot of old people are not necessarily wise, but there are nuggets of truth, wisdom that we pass down. Like when I teach people chess, it's not about being a smart guy and figuring it out. There is tons of wisdom. Like there are certain openings, if you memorize them and you do them, you're more likely to win just by knowing those openings, knowing those strategies. It's not like we think of chess players as these geniuses and they just can outthink other people. Not true at all. Chess is, it is to an extent, but at the highest level. But it begins with certain basic strategies or wisdom of how to play chess. And if you use that wisdom that's been passed down, like certain openings that have been passed down for, I don't know, let's say hundreds or thousands of years, whatever it is, you're going to win. And if you do other openings, you're going to lose. And it's the same thing with wealth management. It's the same thing with how you run your family. A lot of people today, you think, okay, two people get married and then they're going to kind of organize and do whatever they want. And that's okay. That's really stupid. Like we have one of the highest divorce rates in the country. Marriages fail all the time. There's dysfunction between parents and kids. It's not a democracy. It's not something you can just, whatever you decide is the right choice. There is wisdom in how to manage your home, and it works, and that's why it's wisdom. It's been passed down for thousands of years. We had all these traditions, and then all of a sudden, starting really with the French Revolution, all that stuff, but in the last 300 years, like all traditions have been thrown out, and we're suffering for it. Okay, that's wisdom. Talk about wealth training. Wealth training is super important. It's not about getting a good job. If you become a doctor or you become a lawyer, that's not wealth. That's your income. And to get that income, my dad was a doctor. He went through medical school. He took on tons of debt. So even though he was making more money for a long time, he's paying that debt back and stuff. So that's not really wealth. That is income. And becoming a doctor, lawyer, over time, you'll probably make more money and you'll be able to afford more. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about being able to take money and invest it wisely and be able to grow it quickly and intelligently. And that's wealth, wisdom. It's not hard. It's certainly not, you guys are going to kill me. I'll talk about it some other day, but like Dave Ramsey stuff, that's the ABCs of wealth. Don't get into tons of debt. Don't buy tons of liabilities. But that's the preschool. That's like the ABCs. And sadly, a lot of parents they're discovering that book at 40 when they're way in debt and they've wasted tons and tons of money. And they're thinking it's like this huge deal. It's like Einstein, like, oh, he figured it out. The Ramsey way, we're going to do Dave Ramsey. It's really preschool. Your kids should have learned that. My kids already know that about debt, and they're like 5 years old. So you really want to get past that. It's not about being a savvy investor, stock investor, something like that. It's actually very simple to make money in today's world. Because of inflation, it's super easy to make money. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to teach your kids that. If they set themselves up right at 7 years old, and I don't mean saving, that's another thing. I don't want to do the class here. I actually have in Master Talks, I have some of those beginning classes on understanding how to build wealth, real wealth. So you just watch those. I don't want to do the whole speech, but that's important. Kids need to know that, and they need to know it before they go to college, before they waste all that money on going to Harvard because they think it's a great school and then they're $200,000 in debt. I know a lawyer, he was in 40s and I guess he was like about 40 years old and he was going to buy his first house. It wasn't a huge house. And I'm thinking, dude, you're a lawyer. He's like, man, you don't even know. He's like, I had so much debt. I had over $200,000 in debt. He's like, I wasn't eligible to buy a house until just recently. He's like, and when you think like, oh, lawyers make all this money, he's like, you have to establish a firm or work for somebody. You have to work your way up. He's like, it takes years to get there. It's really hard. So we want our kids to understand wealth, the concepts of wealth before they go to college. The sooner the better. And I'll talk about that. I think there's a ton of misunderstanding of how our money system works. And there's a lot of kind of these get rich quick books, and there's a lot of really bad advice about just follow your dreams and work hard, and most of that's nonsense. The winners did it. Successful people, they followed the dreams, they worked really hard. So did all the people who lost. So that's not the distinguishing factor in how to create. Public speaking, I've already talked about this, but I can't say it enough. Public speaking is your superpower. Okay, there's no such thing. I don't like comic books for kids. I don't like that stuff. There are no superheroes except for God, if the Holy Spirit, right? Through the Holy Spirit. But we're not superheroes. The way a human being becomes like a superhero, the strength of 10,000 men, is through wealth, because he can hire them, or through his ability to influence people through his speech. So when you think of Julius Caesar, right? He's one man, but he was able to rule the world almost for a time because he led men. He was a leader of men. He was such a powerful leader, such a powerful speaker. And that's my second thing, public speaking and leadership training. If you want your kids to be great, if you want to have success, they need to have they need to be powerful leaders. That's for their home, by the way. Every one of them is going to be hopefully a mother and a father, and they need to be a leader for their own kids, a strong, powerful leader for their own kids. But if they want to be great too, they're going to go out into the world and be leaders. That's what we want. We want good, godly men who rise to the top and can compete at the highest levels. And that takes the leadership and public speaking, and those are fine arts. Those are skills that you have to work at and master. And you don't do it in a college class. I hate that. You wait till your kids are in college, they take one class, public speaking, they never master it, and then they move on. Public speaking is an art that takes a lifetime to master. Your kids should start at 3 or 4 years old. My kids haven't as much, but they do a little bit of public speaking, I guess around 6 or 7. But if I had it my way, if I had more time and stuff, I would have them. Public speaking is the superpower. I would have them doing it at 5 years old. The Greeks were huge on it. You master the art of oration. It's superpower. You can lead. You can motivate 10,000 men. Even if you're rich, your money will run out. You can't pay people forever. But if you can motivate them through your speech, and it's powerful. It's a real superpower. So gosh, that's some of it. So those are essential things. So if you want a huge hole in your kid's education, like that is it. Like, don't miss out on wisdom. And there are wisdom books. Some of it's in the Bible. I really love the Aesop fables. I'm sorry. And not like just the tortoise and the hare. Like, that's cute. That's a great story. But there's tons of them. We have some of them on our site. I've rewritten some of them and re-illustrated them. We have a book on it. But there's a ton more. I just haven't gotten to illustrating them all. So look those up. Aesop's fables. Don't get the new versions. I hate the new versions. They always give some hokey moral at the end. You're like, I don't think that's really what that moral was in that story. That's not the wisdom they were trying to get at you. So wisdom training, wealth training. Gosh, there's a game called Rat Race. That's a pretty cool game. It's by the guy who wrote Rich Dad, Poor Dad. I actually like that guy. I actually like him more than Dave Ramsey. I know that's horrible. Everybody loves Dave Ramsey. But that's a great place to start. We have some master talks on that, on wealth training, by the way, too. Just understanding markets and inflation. I think that's the most important thing to understand. Understand what inflation is and why it makes some people very, very rich, and it makes everybody else in the country extremely poor. Public speaking and leadership, those are essentials. That should be like math and reading. Like, those are essentials. They should be part of your education. And don't get stressed about all the extracurricular stuff, calculus, chemistry, all that stuff. If your kids never have it, they'll be okay. If you need it for college, fine, take it. But college isn't everything either. I could go through the list of how many successful people didn't go to college. It's crazy. I actually think there's something to that, because if you go to college, you get tons of debt. You're also wasting your youth. And then after college, you get married, and now you have to get a job. But if you use those years before you're married to pursue your dreams, pursue a business or something like that, you could be so successful, and you wouldn't have all the debt and the kids and stuff like that, the responsibilities. You really are free to fail, which gives you a tremendous opportunity. That's why so many new millionaires, billionaires are being made in their teens, in their early 20s and stuff like that. But anyway, okay, I'm done. Hopefully that gives you some encouragement. At the end of the day, I just want you to know that you'll be fine. Do not stress this. Your kids are going to go to college. If they go to college, they're going to be able to live their lives. You know, there were people who got no education back in the day, no official education, and they were okay. They lived their lives. They had happy families. You'll be okay. Don't overstress that. And I always end up rambling at the end because I never know how to end it, but I think that's good. If you guys have questions, just ask them below. And I'll be back on Friday to answer your questions, or we'll talk about something different. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you're a new member, so glad to have you. We'll keep growing the group, and hopefully you guys are getting something out of this. If you haven't read the book yet, I highly recommend it. The new book I was working on last night. I'm really hoping to have it out this summer. It's going to be on character. And I had so many questions on character. I didn't want to bring it up yet because the book isn't out, but that is coming. We have a powerful and different perspective I promise you. A lot of people thought, oh, this is kind of out of the box, it's different. My perspective on character training is totally different than most people. You're going to love it. It's really powerful. It's effective. It works. All that other kind of hokey stuff that's so popular, obviously it's not working with the kids. So that'll be out soon. All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for joining me. I'll talk to you soon.